Чай заварить.
Yes, tea. We in show business are gypsies. I'm not saying the West is perfect. Of course it's not. If Putin and Medvedev fell off a very high building, which one would hit the ground first? Do you know? Who gives a fuck?
Ты все время в чем-то признаешься.
When I came out as gay, my crime was that I had begun with the words ladies and gentlemen, and I'd forgotten to leave room for a non-binary. This has to stop. Je viens Belarus.
Сегодня мы встречаемся в походных условиях со Стивеном Фраем.
I recognize those two words, Stephen and Fry. That's me. Hey.
Как ты думаешь, какое произведение в Беларуси считается, твое произведение считается самым культовым и самым популярным?
That's a really good question. As it happens, because I visited Russia and Ukraine, I know that a thing I did years ago with my friend Hugh, Laurie, Jeeves and Wooster, like P.G. Woodhouse, was very popular in those countries, those Slavic countries, for some reason, which pleases me. I guess because they think English people all have a butler, and we're all like that. But when I was in Ukraine recently, I noticed that they talked about that, and they talked about the film where I played Oscar Wilde. And I guess Belarusian people have similar tastes to Ukrainian people. I don't know.
В Беларуси самым популярным является проект Jeeves and Wooster. Но самое парадоксальное в том, что он стал просто мега популярным в 90-е годы. Тонкий английский юмор, который стал в 90-е годы, когда ничего не предвещало внимания к этому. Но это стало просто культовой историей. Почему сатира стала популярной тогда, я могу представить. Какая сатира сегодня актуальна? И вообще работает ли сегодня механизм сатиры в этом новом странном мире?
It's a really interesting question. My great friend who died sadly 10 years ago now, Christopher Hitchens, who was a fine journalist and writer and visited many countries in the world, he once said that you could divide the world into literalists, people who don't understand irony, don't use irony, indeed find fiction difficult. If they see a fictional story, whether it's theatre, or film, or in a book, they sometimes don't understand that fiction is a representation of reality. It is not a reality itself. That's a complicated way of putting it. But basically, ironists, people who are awake to irony, are usually the kind of people I like and who usually look at the world in the correct way, I think. The only way to understand the reality of the world is to cast it in an ironic shape, I think. And humor, well, I mean, when I was in Ukraine, I had the privilege of sitting with the president for 40 minutes or so, and I told him a joke, which he did enjoy, which is if Putin and Medvedev fell off a very high building, which one would hit the ground first? Do you know? Who gives a fuck? That's a silly joke, but I read a book once, years ago, of jokes that were told in Soviet Russia, secret jokes. And it's clear that in Russia, Belarus, Ukraine, similar kinds of culture, although very different in history, of course.
Вот в этом новом политкорректном мире тебе шутить легко?
I don't have a problem because I don't usually want to say things that are in any way likely to go over the line and cause me trouble. But you have to be aware sometimes. I mean, sometimes it is extreme. I got told off once after a dinner which I spoke, and my crime was that I had begun with the words ladies and gentlemen, and I'd forgotten to leave room for a non-binary. gender. And I was sorry that someone was upset, but I was also puzzled that they were upset. How could they blame someone of my age, for a start, who has been saying "ladies and gentlemen" all my life, thinking that was a safe remark? But I don't want to offend people. I genuinely don't. Sometimes, you know, you get a cab driver who says, "Oh, you can't say anything nowadays. You can't say anything." And if you say to them, "Okay, what would you like to say that you can't say?" You can tell me, because you can say anything to me. So what is it that you can't say? So, and of course they can't. They don't want to say, because they know that what they want to say is probably revolting and disgusting. And so they just like to, "Oh, you can't say anything." Well, come on, be honest. What is it you really want to say that you can't? And then people will go, "Well, maybe you're right." But I mean, freedom of speech is, of course, important. And in the West, we talk about it lightly. But in Belarus, I mean, that is such a difference. And if you've got time, I will tell you a story, because it will mean a lot to you. You're just about old enough to remember the Soviet times. I was in New York, and I had a driver, because I was working for a film company, and they gave me a driver, and he was Romanian. And this was in about 1988, when Ceausescu was still in power. And he had got out and was driving limousines. And he managed to raise enough money to pay a bribe to get his mother, his only close relative, out of Romania. And she landed in New York. He picked her up in his car and drove her to his apartment in the Bronx. And on the way, he said, "Oh, we've got to go to a supermarket, just to get some food." And so he parked the car and went into a supermarket, a pretty normal one in the Bronx, or between the airport and the Bronx. And he went round an aisle and was picking things off the shelves. And his mother had disappeared. So he looked round, and she was on the floor in tears. He said, "Mama, what's the matter?" He said, "They're lying. They lied." He said, "What do you mean?" He said, "You're just a driver. You're just a working driver, and you can come into this store where there is all this." Because in Romania, you had to queue for bread. You know, you had to line for bread. And the propaganda said, "Oh, in the West, only the very rich capitalist pigs with cigars can eat all the workers are poor." And she realized that she'd been lied to all her life. And this is different now. It's not communism. It's something else in Russia and in Belarus. They are being lied to. They're being told, I'm not saying the West is perfect, of course it's not, but they're being told in a sense that they haven't lost anything by losing their free speech.
Раз уж мы коснулись Беларуси, ты, когда мы первый раз тебя попросили включиться в тему белорусскую, ты как-то это очень легко сделала. Потом ты даже читал сказки детям на английском языке. Почему для тебя Беларусь стала таким объектом, к которому ты смог приложиться, приложить свою страсть?
I suppose I've never thought about this before, but I realized the fact that two of my grandparents, my mother's father and mother, and all her family, were Jewish in Europe and escaped what would have been death and persecution and everything terrible that happened to Jews in those countries. And so I was raised to believe that freedom is something you fight for all the time. You don't take it for granted and think, yeah, it's just the air I breathe, it's easy, and I suppose really when I heard about your theatre company and what you were doing, I just felt this is what needs to be done to fight tyranny. I think, like a lot of people, you hate bullies. You hate people who are mean and cruel and oppressive. I mean, it's so simple. But when you're a child, the thing that makes you most angry and upset is when things are not fair and they're not just. You know how all children go, it's not fair. And then the adult says, life isn't fair. But life should be fair and can always be fairer, can be more fair. And I suppose I've never lost that childish sense of, this is wrong. We've got to fight this.
Чай заварить.
Yes, tea.
You drink tea with milk or not?
Yes, in the English manner, I'm afraid. It's disgraceful, I know. You have it with lemon, don't you? With lemon? Yeah.
With milk.
Oh, with milk as well?
Yeah.
And let's be honest, to your viewers, that's oat milk.
Уже несколько раз пересматривал твой фильм. Вот этот сериальный проект про ментальные заболевания, где ты признался в своих проблемах. И сейчас он мне очень близок. И когда ты снимал его, и когда ты признавался в этом, это не было трендом. Ты понимал, что пройдет несколько лет, и это понадобится всему миру.
It's a very good question. And I suppose, in a way, the answer lies in the fact that I realized in the mid to late 1980s, when I came out as gay, that I could do this as an actor. And there were absolutely no other people in public life who were out in those days. I mean, even Elton John wasn't out then. Ian McKellen had just come out. He was the only other well-known actor. And in theatre, people accept people for who they are. It's part of it. And theatre attracts. There's a great line in a Mel Brooks movie called To Be or Not to Be, which is set in Poland during the war. And the Nazis come and different members of the theatre company are arrested and taken away. They take the Jewish members. And then at one point, Anne Bancroft, who's the female star of the movie, her dresser, Sasha, who's a gay man, he doesn't come to work. And Mel Brooks says, where's Sasha? And they say, the Nazis took him. He says, why? He's not Jewish. He said, no, but he's gay. He's a faggot, is the word they used, of course. And Mel Brooks goes, this has to stop. First they take the Jews, then they take the gypsies, then they take the faggots. Don't they realize without Jews, gypsies and faggots, there is no such thing as show business? And it is true. We in show business are gypsies, we are gay, we are different, we are queer in the widest sense of the word. We are just different people. And I think I realized that coming out as gay was easy, but that also I was in a privileged position because you don't get fired from a job as an actor if you say you have a mental health problem, if you have bipolar disorder, as in my case. You know, people will understand it. If it's a job in an office, if it's a job in an army, if it's a job in any other sphere, it is more difficult. So you need, without being, I hope, vain, people in the creative arts have a kind of role in which they can show that you can be proud about things that in previous days have been a source of shame. And you can say, no, this is okay, and we're all right with it. And you can live a happy... The most important thing is to show people two things about mental health, which seem opposite. One is that it is really serious. And it is, in most Western European countries, it is the most common form of death of people under 35 years old is suicide. So that's how serious it is. And children in Britain and in America and in Germany and France, and who knows where else, are cutting themselves with knives in their skin because they're in such pain in their heads. And that's the serious side. And you have to make that clear. But you also have to make clear the opposite, that it is not a death sentence to have a mental illness. You can lead a life of fulfillment and creativity in which you love and are loved, and life is, perfectly possible. And some of the best people in our history have had mental, whether you're talking about composers, artists, but also, others, warriors, Alexander the Great, Winston Churchill, whoever you choose. These are people who were honest about, Churchill called his black dog of depression. So, yes, it's serious, but it's not something that will stop you leading a full human life.
Я вот этот год жил впервые без панических атак, потому что помогли врачи. И мне стало так легче жить, легче говорить, легче высказываться.
I think it's very slow, always progress in life, whether it's progressive politics, whether it's progressive social or sexual or cultural politics. It's very easy to be angry and impatient because everything is 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. And in the case of mental health in my country, in Britain, we've only just started talking about it really in the last 20 years. It's become more, and even doctors now understand more about it than they used to. One of the things I do, I'm an honorary fellow of the Royal College of Psychiatrists in Britain, and the thing they usually ask me to do is to talk to young doctors who are just becoming, they've just become doctors, and they have to choose a speciality. Will they be an orthopedic surgeon, and a neurologist, a urologist, an obstetrician, in all the different things, or a general practitioner? And always traditionally, right at the bottom of the choice list has been psychiatry. That the medical students have spent 7 or 8 years learning every detail of the physical body, and the idea that they then have to attack the brain and try and understand the mind and deal with the embarrassment and the weirdness of ill people in the mind. But so they don't do it. But then when they're 35 or 40 years old, a lot of doctors, say, I wish I had specialized in mental health, because they realize that so much of what they do is up here for their patients, and they wish they understood it. The study of the mind is actually the most wonderful thing, and you can change. And so, yes, if you've had panic attacks, and I know a lot of people who have had that issue, and it is something that can be helped with. And if you are helped with it, it's an amazing gift, because I think it just, you're more connected to everything when you forgive your mind for what it can do to you. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Ментальное здоровье белорусов – это сейчас один из важнейших моментов, потому что часть их воюет в Украине. Часть сидит в белорусских тюрьмах, это политзаключенные. Все они проживают чудовищный период. Вот какие 3 рекомендации ты бы им дал?
Well, I will start everything with saying I'm not a doctor, and as I have said, when things are serious, they are really serious. But if you make the comparison between physical health and mental health, which is a useful one sometimes, we all know that it's obvious there are 2 kinds of physical trauma that you can have, or injury or illness. And there is the kind that comes from inside, cancer, diabetes, asthma, blood disease, all these things are your body from inside. And then there are outside, a car crash, and a trauma, a bullet, a bomb, violent beating up, something that happens from outside. The technical words are endogenous and exogenous. I don't know what the Russian equivalent is, but I'm sure there is one. And it's the same with mental health. You can be born as someone who has depression, who has bipolar depression or schizoaffective disorder, all kinds of anxiety, panic attacks, all kinds of things. These come often from inside, but then there are things that come from outside to your health, like war and torture and imprisonment and loneliness and injustice, things that make your mind, that turn your mind. in the same way you can be born with asthma, but the asthma is then increased by you're breathing something that's bad for you, and you're born with perhaps a possibility of mental ill health. So what I would say is, if you have been made so unhappy by the circumstances around you that it has affected your ability to live life properly, that becomes a mental illness, and it comes from outside. So the first thing to remember is that it is not your fault. It is nothing to do with weakness, that it has to be remembered that the strongest people are likely to get this effect because you care about the world, you care about your children, you care about your parents, you care about your country. It matters to you, and so it breaks you up inside when things go wrong to you and to those close to you. And in a way, you can almost be proud of the fact that your mental health is affected, because it means you are not a zombie, you are not a robot, you are a human being who is responding in the right way to the terror and the cruelty and the tyranny and the injustice around you. It should drive you mad, in a way. It should. You should not be just, oh, well, never mind. You should, and you scream. And this is why theatre and look at the great heroes of tragedy, and look at that. They are often driven mad because they are inside the world and part of the world. And that's why artists lead, because artists show their wounds. Say, look how I hurt, and feel how you hurt too, if you're honest. And so it's a terrible thing that mental health is happening. But if you talk about it and you own it and you say, yes, of course I'm falling to pieces, because look, the paradox, the joke is that, the only sane thing to be is insane. If you are not insane, then you have missed the point.
Yeah. Что для тебя вкус счастья?
Do you know, I wish I knew in some ways. Happiness is always out of reach. I think one of my favorite lines of poetry, there's an English poet called Robert Browning who said that a man's reach should exceed his grasp, or what's a heaven for? And happiness is something that's always just out of reach. And it's one of my favorite poems, actually, is Ithaca by Cavafy, the Greek poet. And Ithaca, of course, is the island that Odysseus is traveling to. It takes him 10 years to get home, desperate to get to Ithaca. And the poem Ithaca talks about everything on the way to Ithaca, and then says, basically the message is, you had to go to Ithaca to experience the journey. But once you get to Ithaca, there's nothing there. It was all the journey. It's that, really. I think work, failure, all the things that happen in life, what give me pleasure, although you don't know it at the time, because you're stretching. Think, when I finish this book, I'll be so happy. When this series is over, if I write this and it works, I'll be so happy. If my relationship is still working with my husband, then I'm still happy. All these things. If, and when you never reach that point. It's just, you strive towards it. It's that makes me happy, not getting there. And people say to me, because I'm now 67, so they say, are you going to stop? Are you going to... and I just think that would be death for me, because I stopped to do what? To live by a beach on an island in the West Indies, or on a boat, or in a nice house with a chef making me food every day? I could afford that. I'm lucky to have earned some money in my life. So, but I just wouldn't enjoy it. So I like just doing things, and I will do things. But actual happiness, I don't know.
Ты готовишь еду?
I do like cooking. I love to cook. I tell you what, if I'm depressed, here's my advice for people who, it may not work for you, but sometimes I can't sleep because I'm worried. Or indeed, I'm a bit manic and I just can't sleep. I'm too excited about life. And I will get up at 3 a.m, and my solution to calm down, feel good, is to make mayonnaise. See? Or hollandaise, or some emulsified sauce like that. It's a mixture of relaxation and concentration in order to make it, isn't it? And I think when your brain is both relaxed and focused, which seems like an impossible combination, then so sometimes at the end of the week, there'll be like 5 jars of mayonnaise that I've made, and one of them will have more lemon, and one will have more mustard, and one will have more garlic. But essentially, and it's so satisfying because you make it, and if you get it wrong, as you know,
Maybe your husband is happy.
He is happy. He likes mayonnaise. He is happy. Yeah. So I'll make then I'll make potato salad and egg salad and things like use the mayonnaise up.
Какое блюдо ты готовишь, когда ждешь гостей и ты хочешь что-то сделать, то, что ты сам любишь готовить?
I'm nothing like the artist you are with food, but I do like to make things like I like cooking fish. It's very exciting to get a beautiful piece of fish and just get it right. Sometimes wrapping it in foil and bake it in the oven.
What's the fish?
Sometimes poach it. Well, I like North Sea fish, so sort of cod and hake and haddock. I like the poached haddock. I make a kedgeree, which is an Indian, Anglo-Indian dish.
Yeah.
Kedgeree is a nice thing with haddock. Yeah, and I like. There's a couple of Nigella Lawson recipes that I do. She's a friend of mine, and so there's some I've watched her make them. And there's a syllabub which she makes with Calvados and dry cider, which is absolutely delicious. But yeah, I like the process of cooking. But when I see someone who's really good at it, I'm in awe. Because what I can't do is what a good chef can do, which is open the fridge and think, maybe that, yeah, some of that. What have we got in the store cupboard? Oh, there's some of that. And they bring together, and I have to have the book and look at it to find a thing. But and I've noticed that basically the best chefs, there are 2 things they do differently to everybody else: twice as much salt and 4 times more butter. And then you're a good cook.
Мы говорим все время о равенстве, но этого равенства так и не появляется в мире. Да? И причем неважно, расовые, сексуальные и так далее. Как сказал наш друг, он был одним из людей, которые были в Stonewall. Он сказал, я боролся не за то, чтобы жениться и замуж выйти. Я боролся за то, чтобы у меня было право выйти замуж. И вот почему до сих пор это равенство не проявляется так, как хотелось?
Exactly. It gets towards that. I mean, I'm very pleased by the fact that I got married within 6 months of it being legal for people of the same sex to get married in Britain. I'm very pleased by the fact that nobody bothers to talk about it or think it unusual. At the time, it was a news story because it was early on, but now it is more normalized. Of course, there are plenty of us, and I have to be honest, part of me, who never really wanted to be normalized, accepted, equal in terms of the law and rights, marital rights, money and so on. But there's also a delight in difference, a delight in not being absolutely normal, if you like. And I sometimes think part of the trouble is if you're in a minority, is that you care about your minority and you rely on allies from outside. So I thought, really, ideally in the world, Jewish people should worry about Palestinians and Arab people. Muslims should worry about Jewish people. Straight people should worry about gay people. In other words, you should take up as a cause something that you are not. Because it's so easy to take up a cause and say, I want this, I want that. But that's kind of narcissistic. It's me. And what we really want, if equality means anything, it's not that I'm equal, it's that we're all equal, or at least treated equally and understood to be equal. And maybe the best way is to care about the other, especially the other that's most likely to be, as I say, as I'm Jewish because my mother is Jewish, I should care more about Palestinians than Jews in a kind of way. You know what I mean? As long as everybody else did the same, that's it. Instead of just wanting to fight for your own cause. I mean, I think in the case of Belarus, it's different. You've got your own countries in a particular crisis, but you rely then on people from outside Belarus to support you. And that's the way the world should be, I think, to support.
Есть люди, которые уехали из Беларуси, которые вынуждены были бежать. Есть люди, которые остались там, которым жить невероятно тяжело. Если ты можешь что-то сказать им вдохновляющее, я буду очень этому рад.
The message is that no matter how bad things are, in history, tyrants always lose. It's usually too late. There's a lot of blood, a lot of broken bones, a lot of misery along the way. But you can be certain that in 100 years, Belarus will exist as a people, as a culture, and it will no one will talk about that man. You don't even have to say his name, just as I never say the name of the one in Russia, because they disappear into history, and whatever is good and strong about people remains. And I know it sounds little. I'm not someone to talk about the political process of rebellion and resistance and how you do that. I can occasionally talk about communication and how you spread the word and how you might try and inspire people to support Belarus. But I do know that in the end, things get put right, but that it's sometimes too long for an individual to bear. It can be, you just think, when is this? This is, but then looking at history, just look back, and one can see, that A, things have been worse, and B, they do get better. It's just a cycle of things. And I suppose, remember the culture, remember the language, the songs, the drama, the music, the humor, all the things, the food, all the things, that the cultural aspects that politics cannot touch. Remember that when Stalin wanted to unify the Soviet Union in the most bizarre ways, he made the language of Estonia and Latvia and Lithuania, he made it, you'll be killed for speaking that language or for singing those songs. The moment he died and the moment the Soviet Union ended in 1989-90, those songs were still there. The food was still there, the humor was there. You can stamp down, or you can pour concrete onto grass, but the grass will still grow through. And that is what you cling to. We're blades of grass, and together you make a whole tapestry of life that defeats the concrete. It's the best I can do. Je viens Belarus.
Perfect.
Thank you. Such a pleasure. Oh my God.